Long enough to cover the subject and short enough to keep it interesting. Welcome to Out of My League. I'm Nick Diaz. So before I do a take on every single one of these episodes, I always like to remind myself of a quote from Mark Twain that I heard years ago. He said, "If you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect." Look, when I do this, I still may find myself on the side of the majority, but at least you've thought about it and really know truly where you stand. So the NCAA is going to officially allow players a one-time, penalty-free option to transfer from one school to another school without being forced to sit out. So the natural reaction from people is, well, this is good for the players. Regular students can. Coaches can jump ship at any time. Why can't the student athletes? I agree with this. Although, what I really, really love is how players only get one free pass. I don't think it's right to have multiple free passes where you can go to a different school every year for 4 years. Yeah, but regular college students can. Why can't they? Well, guess what? The student athletes are not regular college students. How can you say? They're not, okay? And I'll tell you why. Nobody spent 3 years recruiting me every single day in high school to get me to enroll at LSU, all right? Every time I would go to a huge auditorium class, I would see someone standing in front of the door with a pen and a sheet of paper marking stuff down. You know what they were doing? They were seeing not where I was, if I was going to class, where the football players were, where the gymnastics players were, to see if they were going to class. Nobody does that for any other student on campus, except the student athletes. One free pass is enough. The other reaction is, although, with all this transfer portal stuff, is, well, this is also going to be really, really hard on coaches. How's this going to affect the coaches industry? And most people would say, don't care. I don't care. You're a multimillionaire. I don't give a shit how hard your job is. You make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Suck it up. Now, my argument to that is, well, will this make the coach's job harder? I mean, I don't care if their job is hard that much. They're making millions of dollars. But will it make their jobs harder? And is it really going to change college sports that much? Is it really going to make sports that much different? So let's look at LSU football and LSU basketball, for example, in the past few months. LSU football was weak at linebacker, so they went out and they got a number one JC linebacker, Bug Strong, and Mike Jones Jr., starting linebacker from Clemson. Clemson wanted to keep this guy, and now he's at LSU. LSU basketball has their 4 leading scorers now declaring for the NBA draft. Everyone knew that was happening before the season started, so this really shouldn't bring anyone into a panic. So instead of Will Wade saying, fuck it, I guess next year will just be a rebuilding year because we lost, our 4 leading scorers, instead, he gets an all-SEC point guard from Missouri in Xavier Pinson. And Will Wade is not done getting guys who will fill major weaknesses in his roster, including the guard from Illinois, a starting guard from Illinois, and a starting center from UMass, filling holes in his roster immediately instead of just having a rebuilding year. Yeah, but Nick, those guys are coming in. What about Jalen Cook and Andre Hyatt, who are transferring out of LSU basketball? You want to know why they're transferring out? Because Will Wade found someone better. And those guys, like Jalen Cook especially, they're just not cutting it. And they know it. They see the writing on the wall. Will Wade in LSU basketball now has a chance to have a more balanced, well-rounded roster than last year's team. Okay, Nick, this is all well and good, but this is a very LSU-centric take you have. What about Clemson football losing a guy? They're getting screwed over. Illinois basketball and Missouri basketball getting screwed over for starters on their team, leading for your team. Look, as much as that sucks ass for those teams, guess what? Now they can look in the transfer portal and find starters at lower level schools that are maybe good enough to compete at a higher level school. Oh, so Nick, you're just saying that the little school, they get screwed over now? The little guy gets fucked? No, because guess what? The little school can go find the pissed off 7th or 8th best player at Duke or Kentucky who was a 4 or 5 star prospect that is not as good as he thinks he is, and he wants to have the ball in his hands more often and be the leading scorer on a team and show off his skill set. You know who has the best chance of promising him all of that? Not the big schools, the little schools where he's the best athlete on the floor. And also, if you're still having trouble filling out the roster, there's a little something called high school recruiting. Maybe you've heard of it. It's been going on for over 150 years. The market will naturally correct itself. All right? Now, if you ask NBA and NFL coaches, they don't necessarily dislike the idea of free agency in their league. What annoys them is how free agency is done in their league. They can't tamper. They can't talk to a player until a certain day. There's a salary cap, financial stuff going around, and most of them probably aren't good at math. But the idea of them looking into free agency and signing another player or multiple players from other teams to help them out, they love that. You can transform your roster in a second, just like that, overnight. And sure, the job is tough, but I just don't think because guys like Roy Williams, who he reportedly retired at UNC because he knew this new transfer rule was coming. Look, he's not the be-all, end-all, all right? He's also 70 years old and has health problems, some minor health problems. Change is hard at that point in your life. What he fell in love with no longer exists. And there's nothing wrong with that. He paid his dues. He's going in the Hall, or he's in the Hall of Fame. Nothing wrong with that. Look, I interviewed Will Wade on Tuesday on Tiger Rag Radio, shameless plug for Tiger Rag Radio, and the last question we asked him was about this transfer portal and how it's going to affect your job, and he basically said, well, you know, it is what it is. You just got to learn and move forward, and we'll adapt. Yeah, because he's 38 years old. Just adapt and learn. There's positives and negatives to everything. Coaching college sports is always going to be a tough job. Always has and always will. But I think this could be better for coaches than some people realize. Thanks for listening to Out of My League. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or follow me on Twitter and Facebook in the description link below.